But the right-wing conspiracy theories are their bread and butter. However, the establishment has had their own conspiracy theories. In fact, for some time, they've been spreading their own about the mysterious Havana Syndrome. Ooh, what is that? What's the Havana Syndrome? Well, it appears it is nothing. It's not actually real. But if you would listen to mainstream press, again, this is corporate media, places like Washington Post, etc., then you would think, oh my God, Havana Syndrome, could this be a new communist super weapon? So now let me get into the details. Again, Havana Syndrome had allegedly affected U.S. personnel around the world, even Canadians personnel, with symptoms like headaches, fatigue, dizziness, tinnitus. And some were convinced that this was the work of the secret communist ray guns that were melting their brains. Now, it turns out, as I said, only people's brains that melted are the people who actually ran with this and believed it. Now, let me give you the interim findings of a CIA investigation. They found that Havana Syndrome is actually not a sustained campaign against U.S. personnel. Now, that's very interesting coming from the CIA, right? But they said, look, we didn't find any evidence of ray guns. There was no melting of the brains, nothing like that. In fact, it's probably just stress, jet lag, and like a mass, I don't know, like a psychosis, I guess. But again, that did not stop the fact that this isn't real. They found no evidence of ray guns. Didn't mean that there wasn't a massive establishment-backed campaign to fearmonger against certain countries in Latin America. Now, according to an article in Jacobin, on August 9, 2017, the Associated Press, in a report that was republished in outlets from CNBC, CBS, to Politico, claimed that U.S. diplomats had been exposed to an advanced device that operated outside the range of audible sound and had been deployed either inside or outside their residences, for which Washington expelled 2 Cuban diplomats in retaliation. Now, just imagine, right? You take this nonsense conspiracy theory of like ray guns melting your brain, and you actually expel diplomats to another country. What? Insane. Total insanity. All right, so now, within days, nameless U.S. officials were popping up at a variety of trusted liberal-leaning mainstream outlets like CNN and The Guardian to make assertions, or as in the Washington Post, to tell the public that they're investigating this as an attack. Here's some of that reporting. Just the headlines. U.S. diplomats in Cuba were injured by a sonic weapon, Time magazine stated on August 10th. The illnesses appeared to be caused by some kind of sonic wave machine, said a person who was briefed in the situation but was not authorized to comment, reported the New York Times on August 11th. The Daily Beast wrote about the sonic attacks and sound-based assaults suffered by the diplomats in Cuba as part of a long history of sonic warfare dating back millennia on August 12th. Did Russia attack U.S. officials in Cuba? Asked Newsweek on August 10th, speculating widely that a third country, such as Russia, even could have launched the recent attacks, possibly without the knowledge of Cuba. So now we're getting both Cuba and Russia involved. That's sonic attacks, everybody. They're melting people's brains. What? Now, again, when these stories came out, I was instantly skeptical. Like, okay. Like, all right, no, this is probably just stress of the job. And, you know, again, fears of maybe like, oh, no, what if they attack? And there were a lot of, again, diplomatic issues that were going on, a lot of stressors, okay? But again, you know, these symptoms could be very easily explained away. But nonetheless, you have people who jumped in. War-hungry politicians and corporate media figures. One of them being Senator Marco Rubio. Senator Marco Rubio promoted Havana Syndrome as proof that the Cuban government should be issued sanctions even more. He had held hearings on this, taking up government time. made repeated assertions, says it's a documented fact that 24 government officials, the spouses, were victims of some sort of sophisticated attack while stationed at Havana. It's impossible to conduct without the Castro regime knowing about it. Well, it wasn't just him. It wasn't just Republicans. It was corporate Democrats. Senator Bob Menendez. He had a hearing. He says, if senior Cuban officials did not directly order these attacks, they must have been aware, given tacit approval to foreign agents to operate in Cuba. And of course, former President Donald Trump, who said in 2017 that the Cubans were responsible for diplomats falling ill. Now look, can we trust the CIA? Obviously not. No. But here's the thing. When you look at the motivations of the CIA, what do they want to do? What are they famous for? They're famous for orchestrating coups, like in Iran, like the attempted ones in Venezuela. And so when they come out with information that does not help that case, generally you think, oh, well, they might be being honest about this one time. They might actually be honest about something. Because that's despite the fact that they really wanted to find it. For example, at the beginning, CIA Director Burns had reportedly been referring to the officially named anomalous health incidents as attacks in private, had tripled the number of medical specialists working on that issue, had tapped a bin Laden manhunt alum to lead the investigation, and had even openly warned Russia of consequences if it was found to be behind these incidences. So look, the CIA was desperate to find something. Oh, of course they wanted to find it. So they could justify sanctions and war against Cuba in this case. They couldn't wait to go after Cuba. Now, the fact that the agency is now saying, unfortunately, we didn't find that. No communist ray guns. Sorry, we wanted to find it. Well, that's pretty significant. And it means that they, for one, don't have evidence, and that the people, secondly, are not buying this. Because it turns out the American people right now are pretty war-weary, right? We're not interested in getting into protracted conflicts with other people. All right. Now, Senator Suzanne Collins, when the CIA published its report, described some surprise. Quote, which seemed to contradict other testimony that we have had. Yes. Representative Adam Schiff said this was, quote, a first step, but not far from the last, to unravel the mystery. Senator Bob Menendez was a little bit more riled up. He said, everything we've been told up to this point has been different. All of a sudden we come up with a different conclusion. Bob Menendez, deeply corrupt, by the way. Deeply corrupt establishment, can't wait to do war. So now it is funny because, again, here you have Republicans and establishment Democrats. The one thing they always love to work together on is more funding for the war machine, for the military industrial complex. And, you know, they actually were able to get together to buy into a nonsense conspiracy theory. And now they're both mad because they can't use that conspiracy theory to push war anymore, at least on this front. But here's the bigger point, right? I said how mainstream corporate media ate it up. Well, they're the very ones that claim to be against disinformation. But apparently they have no problem parroting narratives they receive from the defense industry and from certain politicians. This Havana Syndrome, to me, sounded just like Marjorie Taylor Greene and her Jewish space lasers. Complete and utter nonsense. It is a huge level of delusion. But why it was accepted is because the establishment hates Cuba. They hate Russia. They hate Iran, and Venezuela. And so anything to try to manufacture consent against those governments and to try to initiate some sort of conflict, that is something that the press, the mainstream press, always runs with. And don't get me wrong, I think there are big issues with a lot of those countries. But they don't involve us. And they certainly do not merit getting us into another pointless, devastating conflict with any one of them. So the lesson here is, take everything that you see from corporate media when it comes to war, when it comes to conflict, with a grain of salt. Because you never know if it's actually just the donors in the defense industry, the military-industrial complex, trying to manufacture consent for another conflict that's going to make them billions of dollars. Now, as for the people that claim to have been afflicted by this, y'all need a vacation. That's what you really need.